In the vast wilderness of the Grand Canyon, the female elk roams free, protected and nurtured. I hear you, sister. Much like Planned Parenthood, which safeguards women's health and well-being. In countless ways. Do you hear that? She's grateful for Planned Parenthood and, beyond misconceptions, ensuring that they're taken care of, just like these majestic creatures. It's quite beautiful. Just like women all around the world have Planned Parenthood. Welcome to the Life in Red podcast. This is a way of life that emphasizes positive sexuality, self-love, and confidence. On this journey, red is now your new color. Be courageous. Be passionate. Be sexy. And never stop living your best red life. So now I have one question for you. Are you ready to live your life in red? To join us on this journey, like and subscribe below. Welcome to the Life in Red podcast. This is Brittany, your host, and we're back at it today again. And today, who do we have in the bedroom? We have Dr. Larry Siegel. Welcome, Dr. Larry.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Brittany.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure for me. This is going to be a fun one. Get excited when I hear inspiring stories. And guys, today, what we're going to be talking about is something a lot of you out there get so mad about. And it makes me so happy sometimes when you guys get mad. I would say, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we're going to talk about Planned Parenthood. And this show is about sex positivity. And we have, these notions of what we think Planned Parenthood is about, but it's so much deeper. And there's so much more to it. And we're going to get into those things. We're going to hear about Dr. Larry, today, and hear about.
Fine.
Okay. Well, we're going to hear about him. And let me tell you a little bit about him. I like to give a good about my guest. Let's see how well I do. He is a clinical sexologist, certified educator and supervisor, and also a professor of psychology and so many other things. He's a teacher at heart that likes to create teachers. He's also a co-host, like myself, host of his own sex talk show called Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Super cool. You can find it anywhere. Welcome again, Larry. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, so I always start with this. Can you tell my audience what got you into this line of work of helping people around sex?
Yeah, I like to describe my own history and how I got into the field as a series of happy accidents and like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Like Bob Ross.
In some ways, there was kind of a predestiny that was involved. Right. I can go back to when I was about 4 years old. Right? And my 4 years old is a whole lot different than 4-year-olds for today. We have a lot of young people today that actually do aspire to come into this field. That was not the case for me and most of my generation. So I'm going to go all the way back to about 4 years old, around 1964 or so, growing up in California. My mother was She wouldn't necessarily have used the word, but I would absolutely call her a feminist from very early on. Um, in the late, mid to late 60s, obviously, as most people know, abortion was not legal. Right? Kind of come a little full circle on that one, but It was not legal, and there was a case in our town where I grew up where a young girl was raped by a family member, and as a result of that rape, she had been pregnant. And the parents and the family pleaded with their doctors to please do something about it. The doctors, no, couldn't do that. And finally, they did have a doctor that agreed to terminate that pregnancy, but nobody could say anything. It had to be on the slide. And that was sort of part of the deal. Somebody ultimately found out. This doctor was arrested. And at the time, the local Planned Parenthood affiliate, and it was a Planned Parenthood was around at that time, obviously not performing these procedures, but they sort of organized a rally, and they got all of these women together, and they said, we need to support this doctor. We need to let people know that what he did was the right thing, and try to do something to impact this. And not only did they encourage all of these women to come out in sort of protest, but they also suggested, if you have young children, bring your children with you, because it's hard to arrest a woman with a young child in her arms.
Barricade, bring the kids.
It really was, but I think in a less exploitive way than some people do it today. So my mom had brought me, and I think my younger brother, who was maybe 1 at the time, and we got arrested anyway. We did.
Yeah.
They did put my mom with her 2 children in arms into the old paddy wagon kind of thing.
Paddy wagon.
Ultimately, everybody was released and let go. The doctor was ultimately exonerated. But that was probably my very first introduction to Planned Parenthood, this kind of activism. And then as the years went by, none of this was even on my radar.
Right.
And as I grew up and as I went to school, I was more sort of pre-med, and I ended up going into an area called psychopharmacology. I used to do drug and brain research.
Oh, cool.
And after a couple of years of doing research, and mostly in laboratories on animals, mostly with rats, I ended up developing a really bad allergy to rats. So after the second time I ended up having to go to the hospital with some kind of asthmatic reaction, I started thinking I need a new line of work. And as I came back into my office, one of my undergraduate students had come into my office really excited. She just heard a woman from the local Planned Parenthood affiliate talking in her health class, and it was so great. And she happened to mention that they were preparing to submit a grant to hire the very first male sexuality educator in the state of Florida. And this was in 1980, late 87, 88. Excuse me. And I figured, hey, that sounds interesting. Right? Again, wasn't even putting any of that other...
The foreshadow.
Right.
Yeah.
So I ended up going down to talk with the education director at the time. It turns out I was the first and only person that they had. They then went through a process again when they advertised, and I got a call a few months later saying they wanted me, and the rest, as they say, was history. And I became the first male education director and the first male educator for Planned Parenthood in Florida, and then got involved in ASECT. I was also involved in therapy because I had that part as well. So I started in with a friend of mine's private practice while I was doing this as well. And then that snowball just kept rolling down the hill. And then the sexuality became the full focus of what I do.
Well, see, that's a damn good story. Like, I mean, you got the paddy wagon, you got the first male educator, Planned Parenthood. I mean, it's all these good tidbits for a good story. So I have to say, I mean, you obviously were meant to come into this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of preordination involved in that. And it's led to a lot of other firsts that I've had in my career as well, and I'm very proud of. So, Planned Parenthood, and again, just to qualify, I'm not a spokesperson for Planned Parenthood. I haven't worked for them in many years, but I will go to my grave being a fan and an advocate for them because they just do such wonderful work.
Well, I got a question for you. And this is going to be a hard one. It's a little bit of a curveball. Would you get back in the paddy wagon again for Planned Parenthood?
I would. Yes, I would.
Right? Yeah. Sorry, I was a bit of just played around with you a little bit, but seriously.
But no, I mean, there's, if one of the things that we learn as we get older,
right,
is that a lot of the things that we make such big deals about and spend so much effort and emotion in when we're younger aren't necessarily all that important. But as we get older, we realize that there are some things that really are. And, part of, and anybody that knows me will laugh that I'm just about to use this word, but part of maturity is this idea of standing up for what you believe in and put up or shut up. And
right.
I think that's really about integrity. So yes, I would put myself out there for the cause today.
Well, and let's get into the cause. Let's get into what Planned Parenthood is, and then we can get into some of the misconceptions. And because I want to first go into my personal stereotype that I've had being raised as I've been very open in a conservative southern area in Georgia, being from an evangelical background. Planned Parenthood was painted to be evil. Right. And that was my upbringing. And so as I came into my own more and more, of course, I'm not thinking Planned Parenthood is evil, but I sure as heck had no notion to dive into what it actually was. I knew about abortions. That's pretty much, and you could get birth control. That's about as far as the knowledge that I had. And that's why I wanted to talk about this with you, because there is so much more. Could you go into some of the other things that Planned Parenthood does in regards to sexuality that people may not know?
Sure. Well, I think, one of the ironies of an organization like Planned Parenthood is, people often go right to their perception and they kind of skip over the name. Right? I mean, so let's start with what this organization is called.
Good
Planned
point.
Parenthood. And when we look at the founding of this organization, it really came from a legacy that we had in this country, much less the rest of the world, where, what is the role of women when we look back traditionally? And that's pretty much as baby makers and homemakers. And there was a time into the 20th century when in this country, in these United States, women were still legally, the legal status of women were property. And again, that old word chattel. Now, if women are the property of men, right, going from the property of their fathers to becoming the property of their husbands, does any woman have the right to say, no, I don't want to have sex with my husband? I don't want to have another baby. So there were so many women who were just dying as a result of not only childbirth, but these multiple childbirths. And when we look at an organization like Planned Parenthood, it was founded on the idea that women, this shouldn't be what women are all about and how women should be defined. Women should be able to plan their pregnancies a little bit better. And it really started more about spacing out pregnancies, helping women's safety just from that standpoint of, all right, if you just had a child, right? Teaching about things like extended breastfeeding or extended lactation as a way of postponing pregnancies rather than having this, this sort of revolving door uterus
of babies
women had. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was really about intentional pregnancy, planning pregnancy. And as it evolved, right, one thing a lot of people don't realize, even once abortion became legal in the early 1970s, that was never the focus of Planned Parenthood.
Yes, interesting.
Getting pregnant when you want to be. So they would help women facilitate pregnancy, how to improve your chances of getting pregnant. If you didn't want to get pregnant, and again, in the mid to late 60s, when birth control was made available, at least medically, it's been around for thousands of years.
Right.
Cleopatra was an expert on contraception. People don't realize, but this was again another option of postponing or not getting pregnant when you don't want to. Another piece that they always had that people never really talk about is if you are considering adoption, Planned Parenthood helps facilitate that and helps give you all of your options. So again, Planned Parenthood is really about informing women of all of their pregnancy and parenting options. Now, let me also throw in, and I know I'm just sort of kind of on a rant here, but it's also important to realize that this is also one of the major providers of just low-cost, what we call women's health care. Right? So it's not just about pregnancy and contraception. There are a lot of women that rely on Planned Parenthood services for breast cancer screening, some of their basic gynecological care, and just overall health care. It's then obviously evolved into more education and advocacy, and in some Planned Parenthood clinics, they will also treat male partners. Right? So, it really is one of the most comprehensive service organizations you're ever going to find. And, that focus that people have, especially when you talk about that very conservative and conservative, both little c and big C conservative, there's that very myopic focus that because they're such a large organization, then their numbers are just naturally going to be higher. But abortion is not the main thing they do by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, you heard it from Dr. Larry, because I sure as heck didn't know this prior to even interviewing you for this call. I myself have had, I've gone to Planned Parenthood. And it was, I debated whether opening up about this, and it seems to be something that every episode I say the same thing, and I say it anyway. So I myself had my own experience with Planned Parenthood. And as I was in there, before I go into that, I'll tell you guys in a minute, but I did notice you can get birth control. I found that interesting. I did notice they made the male partners go outside. It was a very private place for the females to go in and be taken care of.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Sorry.
So, no, that was like a good. Okay. So when I went in there, what I found out, and just so you guys know, like I said, I was raised Christian. And as I came out of that belief system, I believed everybody should have the choice to choose what they want to do, and each to their own, whatever. I don't think even people who are pro-choice can't wait to go have an abortion. You know, I just woke up. You know what I mean? It's not like something. Even if I didn't have that programming, I've talked to so many women. Well, I found out I was pregnant. It was really early, and that was my personal choice. I said if it was very early, I would be open to that. So I went in, and it was very hard because I was dealing with programming and this and that. And I have to say, it was scary, but they did facilitate it very well. They had us all sit in a circle, and they explained to us before you take this pill. I didn't have the procedure. I took a pill because it was very early, and they're as nice as people in a gynecologist's office. They're very they check, do the ultrasound, that you take the pill, and they let you know what you're going to go through step by step. And they're very kind, very empathic for something that was one of the most traumatic things I've been through. But even at that point, all I knew was those stereotypical things. I didn't know women could go get treatment, for their wellness stuff.
Right.
And I think it's beautiful. Like you were saying, that back in the day, it was so pro women to not, because you see in movies all the time, the old movies where people die at childbirth. They're like trying to help you, like, okay, this is a period you're super, super fertile, and maybe be careful right here. They're educating. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I want to say there's two things I want to say. And I really appreciate that you shared your story there as well. And particularly those sort of biases and kind of programming that you even went into that with. And I think it's really important for people to understand, number one, there is no such thing as pro-abortion. Right? There's absolutely no such thing. Nobody is for abortion. This idea that women are so casually approaching it, will go into a situation and say, well, I don't need to use protection because, hey, if I get pregnant, I'll just have an abortion. Nobody thinks that way. Right? Are there women that have had more than one? Yes, it is a tiny fraction of a percent. And it is also not necessarily their doing, in as much as they may not have the choice to say no in those relationships. So, but that's so, like I said, minimal, and it's such a fraction. Every woman that goes through this, whether it's surgical or medical, and now we know it's primarily all medical via a pill, no woman goes into this casually, or lightheartedly. This is a serious decision that women have to make, not want to make, but have to make. And this is part of basic healthcare. And look at what's going on right now, where, once again, how many women their lives are being threatened literally because of crisis pregnancies that now doctors are not able to terminate to save the life of the mother. Okay. So again, this idea of pro-choice versus pro-abortion. Right? And, if you want a little bit more of the picture of the reality, we look at, last I checked, and this is a little bit older, it may be higher, but at least a third of all women that do go and terminate a pregnancy are women who do identify as fundamentalist or very Catholic or evangelical Christian.
It's very interesting.
See, the reality is you don't know what you're going to do until you actually have to do it. We have the luxury of a principle, the luxury of a belief when we're not actually making a real decision. And by the same token, there are women who are militantly pro-choice, and they find themselves in a situation with an unintended pregnancy, and they go through with it. So it's really basic health care. Right? And if I may, another point that I want to make is, like when you say I was raised Christian, When somebody says to me, well, I'm a Christian and that informs my belief, my response is, I don't know what that means. You have to tell me what that means to you.
Exactly.
Because even if you want to look at Christianity, if we want to look biblically, you know what? Abortion was kind of a mandate if the life of the mother was threatened up until a certain point. Right? And the irony is it actually reflects Roe versus Wade in terms of those standards. Right? There was that quickening. There was that point that in the Bible it's called ensoulment. Right? Which we can look at as like the end of the second trimester, which Roe versus Wade said, yeah, up until that point, right? Early on demand. Yeah. Second trimester, it needed to be medically necessary. Any late term, it had to be to save the life of the mother. And what so many, quote, Christian people don't understand is that's exactly what Roe versus Wade laid out. This idea, and I think it's an evil thought, to be honest with you, that these people think that women are terminating pregnancies while they're being wheeled into the delivery room, or even worse, these I'm not even going to use the words I want to use to describe these people. I'm going to stick to the more subtle evil, to think that these women are allowed to actually give birth and then murder their child. That is one of the sickest ideas that I think anybody can hold with regard to any of these issues. And none of that is true. It is absolutely false. Right? Unfortunately, there are women that do deliver, they do have that fetus to term, but moments after delivery, it dies. Right. To give that woman, that parent, and their partner that moment or moments. It's happened to family members of mine to actually have that and hold that child before they're lost. I mean, to think that that's anything other than a tragedy, again, I think that's just a twisted mind.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because it's all these different narratives and perspectives that became very influential and fear-based. They caught on. They were super popular. And I like what you were calling out about, like, what does Christian mean to you? Because that's a really, really good question. Like, I know Christianity for me meant whatever the man on the stage said. And don't think it, don't say it, you're going to hell. Right. If you have abortions, you're a murderer. And I'll say it because that's what I was taught. You are killing a soul that God gifted you with this baby. So even the moment I'm getting in the car to leave for Planned Parenthood with my boyfriend, I remember it still haunted me, but it wasn't as bad as it used to be. But I was so, like, I felt so bad because of the belief, because we have the belief that we are murdering a baby. And I felt like, and I dealt with the emotions that and I love it. God dang it. I love that you said this. I have to go back to this. Just came to me. You were like, nobody is pro-abortion. Right. Thank you. Sorry. I just want to just scream that from the rooftops to people who, and I'm not trying to change your mind, guys out there. We're not trying to necessarily change your minds, but here's some more information. I've had women after my experience, I'm a blabbermouth and I was open about it. I needed the women around me to be around me. I did not hide it. I was in tears. I was like, I'm going through this right now. And women you would never expect, 70 years old, 60 years old, 30-something years old, more than not had experienced this. Christian, Catholic, right, all different types of religions, statuses that were high, statuses that were middle class, not just low class. That's another stereotype, if you want to call it low income. It was all kinds, conservative, Republicans, Christians, atheists, they all had abortions. Right. And no one talked about it, though. No one would talk about it. And I'm, of course, like, how did you get through it? And they're like, we don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right. Yeah, and another, and that speaks again historically why Planned Parenthood was founded. These women, especially poor women, it's always been the case. If you have money, you can be as healthy as you can afford to be. You can go wherever you need to get the care that you need.
Right.
But for low income women, not as many options.
Thanks for joining the Life in Red today, where we embrace passion, confidence, and positive sexuality. Keep painting your journey in bold red strokes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us so that you never miss out on living your best red life. Ready for more? Stay passionate, stay red. See you next episode.